to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories are talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Greetings, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and in whatever part of the world or whatever part of this great country you are in tonight, welcome. Whether you're listening to me live on Facebook or on X or on YouTube, or maybe you're watching the show archived on one of those sites after the fact, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. every Central. We go live every Tuesday. Or maybe you're listening to the show on any of the podcast platforms that it drops on or down on the day after that we go out live on the Tuesday night. Regardless, welcome. I'm very grateful that you're spending the next hour or so of your life with me. I hope you tune in till the end, because you never know what dark and strange byways we will be traveling down on Talking Weird. There's always so many strange things to explore. I'm not going to chat your ear off tonight, because I think we're going to have a wonderful conversation with our guest. He's a paranormal investigator, a paranormal sketch artist, and content creator with extensive experience in the world of the unexplained. As the former producer for YouTube channel Beyond Explanation and Phantoms and Monsters Radio, he has created and overseen shows covering topics such as Bigfoot, UFOs, and conspiracy theories. He hosted the show V, diving into some of the most mysterious and controversial subjects in the paranormal realm. With a unique blend of investigative skills and artistic talents, he brings the unknown to life through detailed sketches and in-depth research, offering a fresh perspective on the strange, the eerie, and the supernatural. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back tonight to Talking Weird, Vincent Richardson. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's great to be back.
Man, it's good to have you. How's your summer going?
It's going great so far. It's been a great summer. How about yours?
It's good. It's hot up here in the Northwoods. I'm super busy with my documentary, but I'm also managing to squeeze in trips to the lake and other fun things with my daughter, which is wonderful. Get to hang out with my girlfriend a little too, which is awesome. So we've got to try to enjoy the summers even when we're busy, because here in the Northwoods, before you know it, those, cold autumn or fall, which you would say here, winds start, whipping through the trees and winter's on its way, and then it's months and months of winter usually. So yeah, I have to enjoy the summers up here, my friend.
I can only imagine.
Our summer, though, I think both of our summers are going to kind of end at the same point this year. We were talking a little bit about it before the show started. You're coming to Crossing Realms Conference.
I am going to attend the Crossing Realms Conference. I'm very excited about it.
Man, I'm excited to know that you're going. And that is, of course, in Richmond, Missouri, Friday the 19th and Saturday the 20th of September, which I think will be a great way to kind of ring out the summer.
Absolutely.
Lots of great people.
Season.
So it was that. Start the spooky season, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just perfect. I'm going to play a quick promo for that conference right now because tickets are available. Lots of wonderful guests, including I'll be there, you'll be there, lots of cool people to hang out with. And it's actually sponsored by the Untold Radio Network. So I'm going to bang up a little promo for that now with more details for people.
Crossing Realms Conference is coming this September 19th and 20th to the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Tickets to this landmark event are on sale right now at Eventbrite. The powerful speaker lineup will cover topics from Bigfoot, UFOs, and aliens, so you will not want to miss attending this amazing 2-day inaugural event. Again, that's the Crossing Realms Conference, this September 19th and 20th at the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Please mark your calendar and get your tickets before they vanish. Space is limited.
Ooh, nice.
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, a lot of heavy hitters on that lineup there.
There are some amazing folks. And I think one of the wonderful things about a conference or a festival is we all tend to operate in this real world where we don't get to spend time regularly enough with people who share our interests. But when you're at a conference or at a film festival or whatever your interests are, I run film festivals as well, which is why that comes to mind. You're surrounded by people who have very similar interests to you, and real friendships can be developed there. And you also get to bump into perhaps friends you already have, like I'm going to be bumping into you there, which is be wonderful, and we'll hang out heaps. But you build new friendships, and there's something really special about attending a conference or a festival or any event where everybody shares, a kind of like mind. And in this case, a like mind in the paranormal and the unusual and cryptozoology and the like.
Absolutely. A lot of good conversations going to be had that night.
And I think we're going to have a good conversation tonight. You pitched tonight's idea, actually, to talk about Bigfoot and other cryptids, and this, I suppose, ongoing debate or disagreement within the community of whether these things are flesh and blood or whether there's something paranormal or some kind of psychic or mental construct or something. So maybe I'll give you the floor a little to just throw out some of your ideas about this.
Sure. There's definitely a lot of different camps out there in the paranormal community, and what they believe that these paranormal entities / cryptids could be. But, it's still out there in the books because not one camp has exact information on the whole thing, considering it's all myth and folklore based. So you have to take everything as a grain of salt, even eyewitness reports.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I mean, my wheelhouse is probably more ufology than cryptozoology, but I don't think there's a bigger difference between the two as some of the more, whether it's flesh and blood in the cryptozoological world or nuts and bolts in the extraterrestrial ufological world, want to present it. And I think one of the dangers is, when you're saying take it with a grain of salt, is if the phenomenon, whatever it is deceptive, then the witnesses themselves may be fooled. The witnesses might not be ever, well, I mean, obviously some people hoax and some people lie and some people, mistake, things for something which is anomalous when it's not, whether it's, Venus in the sky or whether it's, a flash of a black bear in the woods. But I do think people are seeing genuinely anomalous things.
Oh, I agree with that.
But then when it comes to the anomalous, the question is are they being fooled by whatever the phenomenon is? It's something I think about frequently.
Yeah, and it varies, but it all seems to be very connected in the sense where it's very personal in the experience, and it's hard to get straight information from that.
I think there's a lot of different cultural and psychological influences that probably intersect with our perception. I think even outside of the paranormal, although what we're talking about is paranormal, cryptozoological, I think we're influenced, period, in our day-to-day life with our expectations, which we're pre-programmed to expect something to behave a certain way. We kind of get locked into expecting what something is. And that's one of the reasons I think a light in the sky, which people can't identify, they instantly think of as perhaps, a flying saucer or an extraterrestrial spacecraft, because years of popular culture has taught them that a distant light in the sky gradually comes forward, and then you see the disc-shaped craft. And, the same way that if you watch a Bigfoot show, you're told that if you see a strange, leaning of trees in the woods, it's indicative of Bigfoot have been there. Or if, you hear a strange, sound, a whooping sound or something you can't identify, that it's got to be a Sasquatch. Or all of these things that people are preconditioned to, then when they encounter something anomalous, to kind of lock in to what the culture's taught them. And today's culture is, strange things in the woods, Bigfoot, strange lights in the sky, flying saucers,
Sure. And I mean, especially in the Bigfoot camp. So, I mean, you've got the people that think that there is maybe some sort of undocumented North American ape that is out and, living out there somewhere. And then you've got the people that think this is some sort of supernatural creature that, what the Native Americans speak about, this like guardian of the forest or something to that effect. What is it? What are they seeing? What are these people experiencing? I mean, it's hard to say.
I think that I'm glad you brought up the Native American experience or the Native American interpretation, because I don't say this out of any sense of political correctness or any sense of, what I mean, trying to be all, I don't know, kumbaya-ish, but I suspect that cultures that have had long ongoing contacts with various anomalous phenomena, and I could point at other ones like fairy faith in Ireland, my point is, I think people that have had long ongoing cultural experiences with things probably have a better handle on it than, another culture that comes in and then marches into the woods and instantly, interprets, oh, it must be, a totally flesh and blood ape. Because one of the things in so many of those Native American traditions is not that they say it's not flesh and blood necessarily, but it's more complicated than that. It seems to be able to come and go from this world, and it behaves in a far more complicated way. It interacts with them in a far more complicated way in the mythological stories, as well as some of the orally recorded experiences, than something that would just be a yet undiscovered North American primate.
Absolutely. And then there's the even weirder, the stranger, where they see the UFOs and the Bigfoot at the same time. And then you have these reports of Bigfoot stepping out of UFOs and people seeing these Bigfoots turn into strange lights and fly away. So, I mean, what exactly is going on with that whole phenomenon?
I think that's something that we'll talk about again in a little bit. But before we were going to do this show tonight, because again, you pitched the topic, and I think it's a great topic, is I went and I pulled off my shelf a couple of books, both of them by Jerome Clark and Lauren Coleman. This is going to go weird with the green screen. The Unexplained, the Unidentified, which is a UFO book, and Creatures of the Outer Edge is their Bigfoot and more cryptozoological type book, right? They dedicate this book to John Keel. I think they wrote it in 1978. And of course, now we think of Lauren Coleman as being almost, I guess, the grandfather or the patriarch of cryptozoology. And we tend to think of most of his explanations being fairly flesh and bloodish. He has this cryptozoology museum.
He runs the museum, Dean.
Exactly. and of course, his co-author on both of these books, Jerome Clark, is the encyclopedist of ufology, who now totally poo-poos John Keel and poo-poos, these kind of para-ufological explanations. But it's interesting that they dedicated this book to John Keel. But there's a piece in the book I thought I would read because it's fascinating to see there was a time period where maybe what we're talking today could have become culturally ascendant. Certainly John Keel was pushing this in the ufological space as well as looking at cryptids and things. But there was a period when we consider how important Lauren Coleman is now, that perhaps we could have gone in a direction very different to the finding Bigfoot, you know what I mean, type of reality of it's it's an ape in the woods and we can find it. This book's really worth reading, by the way. I can't recommend either of these books enough to anybody if you're watching or if you're not watching. One is The Unidentified. The other one is Creatures of the Outer Edge. Again, they're both by Jerome Clark and Lauren Coleman. And they write this little bit. And they say, whatever the case, we think this much is clear. UFOs and creatures, in other words, cryptids, because before the word cryptid was being thrown around everywhere, UFOs and creatures are generated by a single paranormal mechanism. The parallels between the phenomena are undeniable. And then they go on at some length, making different points why they're similar. But it's fascinating to me that perhaps one of the greatest proponents of a flesh and blood type of interpretation, or at least thought to be that type of proponent, and one of the greatest proponents of the extraterrestrial nuts and bolts type interpretation, they were at a stage in 78 where they were throwing...
Yeah, 78. I was going to ask. See, I think they were a little bit groovier back then, and they were a little bit more open-minded. And Keel was, that was like reading from the Bible of Keel. The ultra terrestrial beings that are, which is what I think too, Dean, personally. I know you think similar thoughts too.
Yeah, I think it's when you look at all of these things and you try to take off or you try to remove that type of cultural lens I was talking about before, which becomes a psychological lens as well, because the culture influences so much. And we're all culturally bound. I'm culturally bound, everybody is. But when you try to distance yourself a little bit from those expectations, you can see what Clark and Coleman were talking about in that piece. You can see that there are similarities between these phenomena, and whether it's the fact that we're and I think one of the best examples is that we're continually left with a lack of any type of hard, paradigm changing physical evidence. You know what I mean? We'll find a Bigfoot footprint, we'll find some hair, which is kind of, not quite, explainable or doesn't really solve the problem. We'll find a UFO landing mark or see a weird light in the sky. Or if you go into the paranormal realm, and we can talk about this as well, of course, you'll have some strange, recording of, a ghost, or maybe it's, a local radio station. My point is, there's always this uncertainty with the evidence. There's never anything which you can really, go to the bank with and change the scientific paradigm with. Whatever these things are, they all remain elusive. And we've been in this, the broader communities. People have been hunting Bigfoot now in America since at least since the 50s. UFOs, or maybe the 60s, 50s, 60s. It got more popular. UFOs since, the mid to late 40s. Ghostly apparitions for almost forever. And we're still no closer to getting a handle on any of this stuff. Let's be real.
No. And I think a lot that happens too is someone will see something legitimately. They will see something very strange, be it Bigfoot or UFO, and then they will start to experience these other paranormal phenomenon. And that almost starts to discredit the whole first original sighting, because things start to become muddied. Things aren't black and white anymore. Things are starting to happen. And, after time, a lot of credible people that I believe that had very reasonable encounters with strange things over time become these people that are just, that they're unrealistically trying to uphold this phenomenon that's been maybe plaguing them since the original thing, or maybe not, because then it starts to muddy waters with the whole psychological problem with the paranormal.
And I think I totally agree with you. And I think that's something that John Keel was super conscious of in his investigations. And obviously with the whole Mothman thing in Point Pleasant, when people were also seeing UFOs and other strange cryptids and strange experiences with everything from dwarfs to weird giants who were leaping over fences to men in black, to this whole gamut of paranormal phenomena seem to descend in the Point Pleasant area in the period when Keel was there, in the late 60s, that none of it was really, you couldn't really, none of it really made sense as, it didn't even make sense alone, let alone all together. But when you step back and you go, well, maybe this is somehow interconnected, then you start to see a pattern. And perhaps in these patterns, whether we'll ever get to the bottom of it or not, I don't know. But perhaps when we step back a little bit and take in all of it, maybe we might see something which makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. I mean, we live in the day and age where everybody has a camera and everybody can record everything. And now AI has been introduced and everything gets a little bit stranger. And now we can't tell if what was recorded was really recorded or if I'm really talking on this microphone right now. But as we advanced with all this technology, we are going to get some answers into the paranormal. I'm very hopeful with the whole quantum physics and Willow project and all that. We're going to connect these weird dots sooner or later, and we're going to get some of these answers.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about that. That sounds fascinating. Like tell me how you imagine some of this stuff potentially playing out, some of the investigations and some of our discoveries.
Well, I mean, we're going to scientifically figure out these like weird things, and then I think we're going to base maybe some, I don't know, paranormal philosophy towards it to connect the weirdness with the technology that is explaining the weirdness of our fringe parapsychology. I mean, there's something going on. Something is happening. People have been seeing things and experiencing things forever. I mean, we're going to get answers even if we don't like the answers.
I mean, I think that might be part of it. I wonder if we'll ignore the answers that we don't like. I'm fairly
more than likely.
I think far more than likely. Much of the push towards disclosure, which is never going to come, and even if it comes, I'll be super suspicious. We'll get to that.
Watered down, right?
Is that people just want to be told what they believe already, right? Like that's the whole point. They don't want the US government to give them some ridiculous or some far-fetched or some explanation they never conceived of within their philosophy or within their theology, perhaps it is. They want the US government to say, and I'm about to get to a point by Horace Smith, who just posted something. They literally are hoping the US government will say something like this, the disclosure people. This is literally what they want. We recovered a crashed craft at Roswell, which was extraterrestrial. We've recovered other crashed sources. We know that there's extraterrestrial intelligence visiting the planet. We've had, dealings with them. Yeah, that's what the disclosure people want to hear. They don't want to hear they don't expect to hear anything they don't already believe. All they want is the US government that they haven't trusted since Donald Kehoe, first the head of NICAP back in the 1950s, and was saying there was a cover-up. Right? They haven't trusted the US government for literally the whole history of the UFO phenomenon. Even before that, if you look at some of the stuff Palmer was writing, the phenomenon has never been, supposedly according to ufology, we've never been told what the phenomenon is truthfully by the US government, and they know what it is. Right, according to people like Kehoe and onwards.
Do you think they know what it is?
No, I think they have no idea. I think that, let me rephrase that. I think much of the phenomenon, like the Tic Tac videos and things like that, I think are ours. I think a lot of it is our own technology. And we know certainly pre-Tic Tac that a lot of it was our own technology, because an historian, a CIA historian, meaning not somebody who wrote about the CIA, but somebody who was employed by the CIA, back in the day when I was doing my PhD dissertation, in the 90s into the early 2000s, a paper came out from the CIA where the historian said, we knew in the 60s that, a fairly large percentage, the vast majority actually, like I think something like 70% of flying saucer sightings in the US could be traced to technology that we were testing, and just simple things now that we think are simple, like, spy planes and things. And we were happy for the US public to think that, and we spun it that. We were happy for that spin to go. So we know in the past that was the case. I suspect things like Tic Tac, various I don't know who it could be like Skunk Works, it could be another private contractor which is building state-of-the-art technology, gets an opportunity to test it on our own pilots, and then our own pilots are like, what the hell is this? Woohoo, look at the way this thing's moving, right? And then what do? They roll out our own pilots. And the pilot says, totally being, and God bless them for their service and everything, because I think they're being 100% sincere. We don't know anything that flies like this. It mustn't have been, of this earth, because they don't. They haven't been briefed on what we have in the black budget, back rooms, which have had, billions and billions of dollars being spent on for decades now. And Ben Rich, who used to be the head of like Skunk Works or one of those projects, literally said, if you've seen it on Star Wars or Star Trek, we built it, or we can build it, and decided not to because, it wasn't worth our while. So the people who are at the top of the ladder have said, yeah, we do all this kind of stuff. We have the technology. But of course, your Navy pilot, he's going to be briefed on what the Russians are flying, what the Soviets are flying. If he's a Navy pilot, what the Air Force is flying and what the Army is flying. And he's going to be taught how to identify all of these things. So he's also the perfect person to put in front of the public, because they're totally sincere, he or her, because there's some female naval pilots as well who've been thrown at us, and just saying, I don't know what this is. This clearly isn't ours. Well, they're not going to be briefed on what Skunk Works are testing, because nobody's going to be briefed on what Skunk Works is testing. So it's the perfect cover. So at that level, I do think there are people within the military industrial complex, both at the upper echelons of the government military levels and also the upper echelons of the private, industry levels, who know exactly what things like Tic Tac are. But as far as what's behind fairies and Bigfoot and these other things, I think they're totally in the dark. And that's what John Keel said, and that's what Jacques Vallée used to say as well before he wrote the Trinity, the Best Kept Secret book with Paola Harris a few years ago. I mean, both of the great, I guess, granddaddies of para-ufology, Keel and Vallée, were like, the government doesn't know what this stuff is. It's
not this consciousness, not this awareness that we're dealing with. This is something that like Crowley and different guys back then were dealing with. This is ancient entities that we are communicating with, and I think they put on different faces. I mean, there's been many more paranormal investigator that has walked this path than I, and said that this is something more of an awareness than a single entity.
Oh, I agree with you. There's something I should throw at you, and we can both answer. This is from Horace Smith, who's a very good friend of the show. He's also been a guest on the show a number of times. He's Professor Emeritus of Astronomy and Physics at Michigan State University. And he says, one's belief in events such as the Roswell crash must shape your conclusion as to whether UFOs are nuts and bolts or paranormal. That's a good point, Horace. What's your take on that, Vincent?
That is a good so the Roswell crash, I mean, there was 2 crashes, right? And what happened? Was it a weather balloon, or was it some sort of alien craft that we knocked out of the sky accidentally with sound waves, or on purpose accidentally? I'm not sure, but yeah, it's more than it's more than you can explain with a simple explanation as, were they aliens that crashed here on Earth on accident that day? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And I can see Horace's point, because if you accept the Roswell crash as a literal reality, in the sense that there was a craft that was not of this world that crashed in the desert of New Mexico, and the US Army Air Force retrieved the wreckage and bodies and covered up the story, then I think by default you've got to say, maybe not that it's extraterrestrial, but that it's at least nuts and bolts. It could be like some people are suggesting now, ultra terrestrial race that lives on this planet, and, comes out of hiding. But then you have to acknowledge that if you believe that, by default, you have to accept that there's, non-human intelligences flying around our sky in metal crafts. And that's one of the reasons, to play devil's advocate for a moment, that John Keel so adamantly was against the Roswell crash, and would make arguments like, well, it could very well have been a Japanese Fugo balloon, or whatever they were called, that the Japanese were launching, during World War II. Or
yeah, I've heard other crazy stories too. Like they put kids in there and burned them badly and wrecked it down so it looked like aliens and all this other crazy stuff.
Yeah, Nick Redfern wrote a book about testing with, deformed children or the like in body snatchers in the desert. And I mean, all of these
Great
things.
author, Nick Redfern.
Yeah, Redfern's great. I think all of this stuff's potential. Mind you, I don't think we need to go as deep as looking for an explanation of why, if they retrieved humanoids in that crash, because that's a story that comes around almost 30 something years after the Roswell event actually happened. The original story just had strange debris that was found. Right. And it wasn't ridiculous. The original story, it's not like they found, you know what I mean, something that glowed blue and started projecting holograms. It was just like, well, this stuff was kind of weird, and you could crush it a little and it would unfold, and it was lightweight. And a lot of those explanations have been covered very well in a book by a couple of, I think, as a sociologist and maybe an anthropologist, and somebody who actually worked on a high altitude balloon testing system back in the day. And they lost their balloon, and they said the guy, that it's divided into different parts, the sociological part and the anthropological part, I think, and the actual the tracing of the balloon. He's like, that balloon was one of ours. That's clearly the balloon we lost. We had it, the tape that we were using looked like weird hieroglyphs. It had weird printing on it. The material was super lightweight. It was a super sensitive program. Jesse Marcel would not have been briefed on what was on it at all. It was like testing high altitude, radiation or something. Nobody would have known what this was. And if it had crashed, it would have spread debris everywhere. It would have disintegrated, just like, the original Roswell story talked about, all this silvery stuff all over a field. So I think I almost don't need to have an explanation for the humanoids which were discovered, because that's not talked about at all until decades afterwards, when everybody's been polluted by all kinds of stories and all kinds of different films. And so who knows? But the original story, I think that academic book, and I think it's just called something like UFO Crash at Roswell, which are probably 50 different books are titled now, but it's a very strong academic book. It really made me think. I'm pretty sure this is the explanation for Roswell. To answer your question, Horace, that's my take. Anyway.
But if a UFO didn't wreck and there was no bodies, then what did Nixon show Jackie Gleason?
Well, there's a talk about the Gleason stuff's interesting as well. Who knows? Who knows? Don't forget there were other stories of other crash sources as well. There's the Aztec crash story, right? Like was meant to have been a crash in Aztec, or is that Arizona or somewhere, or who knows? I don't know. And we can never be sure how much of this is psyop stuff as well. Like, show them a little bit to confuse people and to throw them. I don't know.
That's the whole Tic Tac thing. Like, why would they show that us? Why would they show that to us now? Why have this disclosure meeting 1 and 2.0 and 2.5 and what all of that? Get out of here. Come on.
And I totally agree with you. And I think that the people that are put forward as experts and know that, I really don't think they know anything. I mean, as far as I have all kinds of issues with Stephen Greer. I really do. I think a lot of his stuff is whacked and out there, but I think some of his criticisms about disclosure are dead on. Like, I think his criticisms about David Grush probably being played are absolutely dead on. Like, Grush is just being told stuff by people. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then, kind of being guided in this direction.
He does
It's
make a
not like,
lot of money off that C5 stuff, though. That is very
oh, listen, I totally agree with you. I think the C5 stuff is,
for
I don't think,
$10,000. You can join me on our ranch, and I'll contact ET.
I agree with you.
Oh.
I agree, and I think that Steve Greer is a true believer in his own version of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and still making bank. But I do think he's a true believer. But I don't think his beliefs are accurate either. But I do think some of his
You
criticism.
don't think he's part of the whole fake disclosure thing? You don't think he's being played like 100%?
He could be. You could be right. He could be totally being played. Because it's a different version of it, right? His version has, and of course, that's the best kind of disinfo. The best kind of disinfo has some truth in it, right?
Right.
And his version is most of this stuff is ours, and we're being, they're trying to set us up for belief in, this coming aggressive alien invasion. But the ETs are really quite nice, and we're just being manipulated by an evil military. Industrial establishment. Some of that's true. I'm not sure about the good ET part of it, but I think the manipulation part of it is accurate. But that's great disinfo as well, right? Like
Great if there's just good ETs out there trying to save us right now.
Exactly. So it's still great disinfo. Good point.
I don't know.
Let's roll back to Bigfoot quickly, though, because otherwise people will be like, "You said you were going to talk about Bigfoot and cryptids."
That's true. Sorry, guys.
No,
on these alien tangents.
It's my fault. So what are some of the things that you think might be indicative that, well, both ways, what I don't want to lead you, but what things do you think might be indicative that Bigfoot is flesh and blood, and what things do you think, and maybe you can't think of any for either of these arguments, and what things do you think are indicative that it's not flesh and blood or something else?
Okay, so in the flesh and blood camp, we have a certain doctor. I won't toss her name through the mud, but she went on a big DNA hunt and spent a lot of money and had a lot of very good investigators on it. People I know that went on these trips to pick up Bigfoot's DNA, and they didn't get the results they exactly wanted. So they started spinning different stories, and it really was a pivotal moment in the Bigfoot camp because
Gosh,
boy, did everybody go to different directions after that. You remember that whole thing, Dean?
No, fill me in. I really don't know. But I'm not cryptozoology. Really not my
Dr. Melville Ketchum tried to collect a bunch of DNA. Said that they darted Sasquatch. Said they collected DNA from hundreds, I think, of different specimens. And most came up with people genes, and others were unknown, but not anything solid, of course. But my whole point in bringing this whole case up is you had people that legitimately I believe are good investigators out there doing good work, collecting good samples, keeping these samples clean, doing it the right way. And all it takes is a couple of bad eggs making up stories to pollute the whole truth on what you could have. So did they ever collect anything solid? Did they ever find legitimate proof that there is unknown hominid DNA out there in North America? I can't say it definitively because of all of the circus that ensued and does ensue in the Bigfoot community.
You probably talk to as many, if not more, people in the community than I do. I consider myself more as like an historian or an anthropologist or an anthropologist on the edge of it. But which direction do you think the Bigfoot community leans in heaviest these days? Do you think it's still flesh and blood, or do you think that kind of the other interpretations are making real headway? Or
there's a good group of people that are investigating called Project Zoo Book that are actually looking for like a real possible North American ape, and they're doing cool stuff. That's neat. But most of the Bigfoot community is sold into this kind of like supernatural man ape that is in the forest. And they do crazy things like habituation, which I wouldn't recommend anybody to do, which is trying to form a relationship with these unknown creatures. If you're having unknown creatures sighted in your woods and they are banging on your house or bothering you on a regular basis, don't feed them or try to get them to, I don't know, be more of a part of your life, because it usually doesn't end well. And it's usually bears. So
there you go. And even if it wasn't bears, and if the Keelian interpretation and the interpretation by Coleman and Clark back in the day of creatures of the outer edge is accurate, if it's somehow, part of some paranormal, mechanism or whatever the term is they use, it's probably unwise to encourage it anyway, right? Like either way, it's probably unwise.
Right. I mean, these people that believe that the Bigfoot is out there are also in the same camp that believe that this dog man creature is out there, and this goat man creature is out there, and this moth man creature is out there. And if there are these super weird humanoid creatures out loose in our woods that live ferally, I would suggest that maybe forming a relationship might not be the positive thing to do.
There could be like, what's that Werner Herzog documentary?
They're safe and sorry, right?
Exactly. I was watching the Werner Herzog documentary with my girlfriend recently. I was introducing her to a grizzly man about, what's his name? Tim, whatever his name is, who went out and was living with the grizzlies.
With the grizzlies, and took his girlfriend out there. And
they ate it. They ate them.
I mean, what are you doing?
Horrible story, but it might be the same with Bigfoot. We've got no reason to believe, if it's physical, and I don't believe it is, but at the same point, you're messing around with crazy creatures outside.
What if it was Gigantopithecus or some sort of Neanderthal hang-on or something like that? Some sort of feral human thing in the wood that was very hairy.
Kill you deader than a hammer if it got the chance.
Yeah, man. I mean, bears are smart, I mean, I'm always surprised you hear these crazy other stories about raccoons and stuff. They're so smart. Can you imagine a hairy man out in the woods? They would be fairly intelligent, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it might be like the guy in the Grizzly Man documentary. Some of the bears seemed he could kind of cope with them, but eventually the mean, hungry one ate him.
Right.
So to assume that all Bigfoot, if they are physical, and again, I don't think that, but if they are I don't think maybe they're physical in the way Native Americans talked about them being physical, but I don't think they're a lost, some lost tribe or some undiscovered.
Well, they think they're going into like different vibrational beings, from my understanding. They think that these creatures they inhabit a higher existence than we do, and sometimes come down to this lower existence that we are a part of. And that's why they phase and are seen going through portals or turn into orbs of lights and stuff. It's because they believe that these things are maybe of a higher dimensional substance.
And that might be accurate to the point that a religiosity might help explain something which is beyond explanation. So it might be accurate to a degree. It might be more accurate than saying they just live here all the time, but it could be that it's something which manifests here and doesn't actually, isn't actually an ape man that lives here and then walks through, to another level of reality. But it might still be a better explanation of some intelligence or some force that comes and goes from this reality. And to me, that explanation, whatever the minutiae is of it, seems to be a better explanation for a creature that, despite a hunt which has been going on now for at least 60 years, we're no closer to the truth. And the thing, and this is a thing I say all the time, often you see on these Bigfoot documentaries, they'll play the skeptics view. Well, if they were, ape men or, relict hominids living in the woods or undiscovered North American ape, we'd have a body. And then they pull out some, sympathetic to Bigfoot lore biologist will say, well, in North America, if an ape, if a bear dies in the woods or if a deer dies in the woods, the decomposition is so fast and the animals eat it and scatter the bones, there's nothing left really quick. Sure, okay, maybe, but I'll tell you what, there are people in North America shooting deer and bear and everything else all the time, and people have not only have they shot at Sasquatch multiple times, and incidentally, that pops up in this book as well. People shoot at these things and are positive they hit them and nothing happens. Sometimes they disappear in like a puff of smoke and a flash of lights, or sometimes they'll be like just squatting at the bullets like they're mosquitoes, or sometimes they just won't react at all. So because we live in the United States of America, or even in Canada, where there's still a fairly healthy firearm, ownership, not as healthy as here, but because we have the Second Amendment here, there's no way on God's green earth that somebody hasn't shot one of these things. There's always the stories that, well, we shot one and then we buried it, and somebody used to ring Art Bell and say they shot it and they buried it and whatever else.
Right.
There'd be people shooting these things left and right if they were being seen as much as they're talked about. And somebody would drag one into Fox News and throw it on the doorstep, and they get their 15 minutes of fame. Don't forget, this isn't a week we're talking about. This is going back to the 50s.
Men in Black are just guns and people. They're just that good. They just, every time you get a picture, every time you shoot one, all of a sudden there they are. They got the flashy thing.
It's like the ninja of the and that's the thing where the physical people kind of are silly, because listen, I would, if you want to say that, oh, they're super, there's so much more aware of us or something, then you're drifting into the woo that you hate so much. Because to quote, Schwarzenegger, if it bleeds, we can kill it. So if it's flesh, somebody's killed this thing, not once or twice or three times in the last 80 years. So, well, he felt bad that maybe he'd murdered something and he buried it, maybe once or twice. But there's been more people than that have killed Bigfoot, if this many people have seen Bigfoot. And there's whole shows about it, killing Bigfoot, mountain monsters and all these other shows where people are out there trying to shoot them. Not
and
to
if
mention,
you know somebody who's killed Bigfoot, I want you to email me and tell me the story about it.
you'd have that'd be, you could launch V with that. You could bring somebody on and relaunch it with somebody who would
Bigfoot murder mysteries.
Yeah, Donnie Cho was in the
Donnie
chat.
Cho.
I was on. If people didn't see me on Donnie Cho's show on the weekend where we talked about horror, it's worth watching. It's a fun show. It's worth watching just for the wonderfully hilarious AI assisted credit sequence that Donnie made of me and the song about me being the Dean of Horror. It's just so damn funny. I should throw to Horace again. He says, this is back to the UFO thing. He said that Kevin Randall has some interesting arguments about the mogul balloon explanation for Roswell. I don't believe all of his conclusions, but he's always interesting. I agree. I like Kevin Randall's writings. I also like Don Schmidt, both as a writer and a person who's often a co-author of, he was a co-author of one of the main Roswell books with Kevin Randall. Donald Schmidt's a great guy. I don't agree with him, but I don't think these people are insincere. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the government did recover, crash sources and dead ETs. I'm just throwing out my ideas.
Right. Who's the real expert anyway?
No, none of us are. I think John Keel had the card, and what was it? It was something like expert wasn't the word. Authority of nothing or authority on nothing or something was his business card. And that's the reality in this space. Nobody likes to admit it, but I don't know anything. I can look at this as a cultural, historian and tell you what I think, the history teaches us about us. But the phenomenon itself, I'm just making guesses out like everybody else is.
Yeah, I just have ideas and opinions. That's all.
But it's always a blast to talk to you. What about other cryptids? Like, do you think there are other cryptids that fit the potential pattern of not being flesh and blood, or do you think there are cryptids that are very likely flesh and blood?
Dealing with the whole winged humanoid phenomenon back a couple years back, I found it very interesting on how many people have actually experienced a winged humanoid, be it some sort of angelic experience or some sort of demonic experience or something weird in between. And digging into it deeper, it's a phenomenon that's been happening as much as ghosts or wild men in the forest or werewolves. It's something that's a part of our consciousness. It's a part of our folklore. It's a part of our mythology, and it's strange that these reoccurring themes still exist today, and these people are still having experiences of these things that they've been talking about forever today. So it leads some, I don't know. I mean, the people that had seen these winged humanoids were people that worked at an airport, like airport employees, pilots, and police officers. So I mean, they were like, don't tell, don't put our names out there, all this, and it leans towards the truth a little bit. I mean, what did they see? I'm not sure, but a lot of people were seeing a lot of the same kind of thing in Chicago for quite some
You're
time.
right. That was
And-
the last big flap, right? The last big Mothman flap was at
Yeah.
Chicago Airport a number of years, like
Yeah.
4, 5, maybe even more, maybe several years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah, right outside of this weird little cemetery that was right off the airport. They were having condensed sightings of some sort of gargoyle-looking creature.
It is interesting how all of history has some creatures that seem to repeat themselves both through the centuries and also across cultures. And like you said, one of them is definitely humanoid creatures with wings. Of course, another one would be dragons. Dragons are a cultural mainstay across almost every, pre-modern culture on the planet.
Do people still see dragons? I guess they do. I remember getting some of those back when I worked with the other guys. Yeah, that's a wild phenomenon. I would have thought that we would have killed out all the dragons, as the knights did in those days.
Unless it's not physical.
Unless it's not physical. There's a thought. Most dragons in sci-fi, fantasy books, they're not just dragons. They're higher intelligent beings. I mean, there might be something to that.
That's a good point. Don't forget too that and I'm sure you're more than aware is that when the dragon legends in the pre-modern period were so prevalent from thousands of years ago to several hundreds of years ago, we didn't have, and I mean, I'm far from the first person who said this, we didn't have the term dinosaur yet. So dragon was just what these big reptilian things were, right? Today, when people see some of these type of cryptids, and I'm putting parenthesis around it for people who aren't listening, who people are only listening and not watching. For example, pteranodons or pterosaur type creatures. These things today are identified as pteranodons, but perhaps if Jason McLean, for example, a good friend of mine, I think you're probably friends with Jason as well. He'll be at Crossing Realms. He saw a pterosaur type being way back in the day. It was probably one of his points of entry to the paranormal.
Yeah.
And lots of people have, but if he'd seen that thing, 300 years ago, it wouldn't have been, oh, I saw a relict, flying, reptile from the time of the dinosaurs. It would have been, I saw a dragon. They wouldn't have had the word dinosaur to use. It would have been, I saw a dragon.
Cooler. I think I'm not calling dinosaurs anymore. I'm just going to call them dragons.
I think that's
Bring it back, dude.
Yeah. That makes total sense. While we were talking about those weird things, my light blew off in here, which is super weird.
No.
It came back on. There, I had to touch it to turn it back on. Just went off with. There you go. It was the spirit of the dinosaurs. Well, I've heard other people suggest that modern dinosaur sightings might be even ghosts of the dinosaurs.
I love that. I love the Loch Ness monster is actually a ghost.
It's interesting.
That was actually conjured by, drumroll, Aleister Crowley.
You're right, because he had his property on the side of the loch and was doing all kinds of ritual magic there.
And then who bought it? Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
Oh, was it Paige you brought it up? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Cool.
So I mean, I think some of these things, maybe some of the mystery does lie in semantics. Maybe some of the mystery does lie in the terms that we actually use. Donnie Cho's always funny in the chat for those of you who are watching the video,
Bruce Lee was the dragon.
for the video version. But maybe some of it becomes a language question as well, because today we will say it was a dinosaur, and perhaps in the past people would have said it was a dragon. And there's a great book by Ted Holliday, who was another thinker within the Keelian camp. I think he corresponded with Keel, who wrote a number of books on the Loch Ness Monster. But my favorite, the first book I think he wrote was called The Great Orm, and his theory then was it was some kind of mollusk or something, like it was. But then later he went to a more metaphysical approach in a wonderful book called The Dragon and the Disc. And he noticed that there seemed to be in Neolithic England, or Neolithic, I guess, Britain, the worship of disc-shaped things, which often appeared in artwork, as and it would kind of was the correspondent, the negative correspondent to that was dragons or serpents, and he was able to start to develop, this idea that these things, both flying saucers and things like the Loch Ness Monster, had been part of the consciousness of, of humanity, at least in that part of the world, for a very long time.
Right. I get that. Sure. Disc shapes and dragons and UFOs. I see.
I mean, who knows? Horace makes the point, aren't all birds now regarded as dinosaurs? You see some of my chickens attacking each other. It looks like some T-Rex battle, I'm telling you right now.
Fantastic.
But speaking of the Loch Ness Monster, and I'm not sure about the Loch Ness Monster, but as far as aquatic cryptids go, I don't know what your take on this is, Vincent, but I think I'm most sympathetic if there is a physically spectacular cryptid, not like I don't know, a species we thought died out 300 years ago and is still alive, or 100 years ago, like the thylacine in Australia, which is meant to be extinct. I think there probably still are thylacine running around. I don't think that's even that.
I'm hopeful. Yeah,
I'm hopeful too. I don't even think that's that ridiculous a point. But I think when we talk about weirder cryptids like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or sea serpents, I'm very sympathetic to the potentiality that there are things in our oceans which are the level of what we would think as monsters, things which are so, ridiculous that it would be quite paradigm shaking if they were found. I don't know it's because the oceans are so vast and there's lots of places for these things to hide.
Yeah. What do we know about the oceans? We know near nothing about the oceans, really, statistically anyway. I mean, there could be anything down there. You always hear these weird, fun stories like the blip, where it could have been some Leviathan, moving down there. But I mean, there's stuff down there that we thought didn't exist just a couple years ago, and now know that exists. So it's kind of crazy. Anything could be down there.
Yeah, I think it was Doug Hychek, who is obviously the head of the Untold Radio Network, and he used to be the creator and producer of Monster Quest. I think it was the camera that he invented and his team that filmed the first giant squid. Like they've been talking about this thing forever, for hundreds of years, and then he actually, captured it on camera. So,
yes, Doug's had some crazy experiences. Wow. That is definitely one of the highest points, though. I mean, you hear about this thing for years, and pirate shanties and old sea stories, and then there it is on camera for the first time, and now it's documented. Yeah, 100%.
All we need now is video of a plesiosaur or a mosasaurus or something like that. Now, I played a wonderful documentary at the festival this year. It was the festival I run, Midwest Weird Fest in Eau Claire, in first weekend or second weekend of March every year. A film called They Created a Monster, which was my favorite documentary I've ever seen on the Loch Ness Monster, because turn the cameras around, instead of looking at what the monster was, and looked at the people who had developed this mythology, or who'd been there filming it, who'd lived on the side of the lock in tents and things. And it was just a fascinating exploration of where so many of these ideas come from, and where the passion of the people who are involved come from. And I think sometimes, at least it's probably how I feel, I think sometimes the best we can do is look at how the influence on what we believe is spread, and the people who are the progenitors of those ideas kind of influenced us in the first place. That's the position that I'm probably most interested in, because I can track that. It's hard for me to track the reality of the Loch Ness Monster, or of UFOs, or of Bigfoot, or anything else, but I can certainly look at it culturally and see how these ideas and beliefs kind of become popularized.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's great that nowadays, like things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monsters and ghosts and things like that can be openly talked about and are like cool, like they're publicly accepted. You're not the weird kid getting weird, spooky books, at the library anymore. Here now, everybody likes the weird and the strange, and they're more minded to it, and I think that's why more people talk about it now. I think that's a great thing.
Mate, I think that's a great end to the show. So, is there any place you want to point people at, or anything you want to?
Well, I think everybody should come down to Richmond, Missouri for that festival. I think that's going to be a great time, and you can say hello to all of us crazy people out there and talk about weird stuff together.
Man, we're going to have a great time. And I can't wait for your show V to come back. I miss it. It was great.
I'm looking forward to that too. It'll be around the corner. I'm still getting some kinks out.
Aren't we all, my friend? Aren't we all? It was wonderful to have you back on Talking Weird. So thank you for joining me tonight, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure as always. Thanks for having me, guys.
And until I get to talk to you again, Vincent, until I get to talk to everybody else out there, until the same weird time, same weird network next week, please keep it weird.